Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody is doing great today. My name is Arnab, and this is Al. It's a great privilege, and we are pretty excited that we are here today to talk about artificial intelligence and our perspective on that. And it's really timely because I don't know if you guys saw the news today. We at Accenture and Google, we announced our strategic partnership of setting up Accenture Google Business Group together and how we will drive transformation in the industry together around intelligent enterprises. So I'm personally very excited, and we will speak about that. Just a quick background, I've been recently relocated to US. Prior to this, I was in Central Europe running our applied intelligence business out of Germany for the last 5 years, and just been here last month and to power up our AI agenda in the Valley. And Al and I have been working together. Al is from our strategy practice, leading retail and consumer goods in North America. And we are really trying to bring the industry transformation together, powered by applied intelligence. So very excited to be here speaking to all of you. So in terms of talking about artificial intelligence, I personally believe, being in practice for the last 20 years when analytics, data, and AI was not that cool, I really believe that this is probably one of the most disruptive phenomena we are seeing in the world after the great industrial revolution. We as Accenture, we believe that artificial intelligence is not one single bullet. It's not one single technology, but it's a constellation of multiple technologies coming together. And this combinatorial effect of all of these technologies is what empowers and enables significant business outcomes. And that's what we are going to talk about. Al and I are going to talk about today as to how we are seeing with our clients across industries, how are they making this shift to become an intelligent enterprise. And we are going to talk about some of the client examples, their stories, and more importantly, talk about how to really make it happen, where to start, how to take that journey, what are the areas to focus on. So we'll be focusing a lot on that so that you can take home from here some of those learnings and experiences that both of us had. So right off the bat, you would see me speaking about applied intelligence, and that's very deliberate. It's a strategic choice we have made, talking about applied intelligence and not artificial intelligence. And the reason is we believe that when we talk about artificial intelligence and what it can do for our businesses and for our communities, it's all about applying it. And that's what we believe is the true potential. And one of the things that we believe is that it's also about how humans and machines are going to work together to create this new form of intelligence, right? And apply that intelligence into our businesses and communities. That is going to make it fun. That is going to make it exciting. So we really took a strategic call as Accenture to bring together our capabilities around data and analytics, artificial intelligence, and automation all together, and bring it a global business group called Applied Intelligence that will power up new possibilities and help our clients reimagine their businesses in a completely new way. So as we talk about that, let's get on the same page. AI is a big buzzword, a lot of definitions around it. We wanted to share our view on that, how we look at AI. And it's our prime belief is that it's about creating systems and machines intelligent that can help augment human beings to do their jobs better, help elevate the performance of human beings. And when we do that, it you can think of this picture, the diagram, it's not an eye chart. Think of it as a flywheel. And it has got 3 concentric layers. The black circle that you see at the center is really the machine learning aspect of AI, which really enables machines and systems to become much more intelligent with every interaction, learn through every interaction that it goes through so that it can improve its performance. And today, what is happening with AI and what's going to happen in the future, I would say this is the kernel, this is the core. And a lot of investment is happening here today, a lot of advancement is happening in the whole machine learning, whether it's deep learning or shallow learning. This is going to be an exciting space and is getting into mainstream. What comes on top of the learning loop is really the end-to-end capabilities around AI. And as I mentioned, it's a constellation of multiple capabilities. starting from speech recognition, text recognition, those kind of capabilities, using natural language processing, natural language generation, to things like machine vision, for example, and a lot of predictive algorithms. You kind of mash all of that together, powered by the machine learning capabilities. And then on top of that, it really enables organizations to think of what's the art of the possible. How am I going to apply all of these great capabilities to solve a business problem? And that's extremely important. And that's what we call as the application layer. These application layers could be about an intelligent agent for enabling better customer interaction and intelligent customer interaction or personalized customer interaction. This could be about creating fraud management systems powered by machine learning capabilities. This could be around, how do I create a next generation of personalized healthcare, for my patients, right, to get the best outcomes. So it's like people like us here in the room think of different possibilities that reimagines the way we run our business today. And that's in a nutshell how we look at the whole sphere of AI. So when you look at, and when we looked at applied intelligence ourselves, we said the vision of our applied intelligence business should be around the whole sphere of human and machine interaction and collaboration. And today, if you look at the newspapers, every day there is a lot of news, positive news about how AI is going to create new jobs, new possibilities. But there is also another side of the news which says AI is going to take away our jobs. I think the answer lies somewhere in the middle. And we believe that that's a big opportunity. There is not so much of a debate of how to create that middle path and how to apply AI in the business to drive those outcomes and what's the right way to start. And we believe that there was a need for a management guide for business executives like all of us here to chart that out. And we came up with this book called Human Plus Machine, which is really a management guide to how to drive the AI agenda. Our CTIO, Paul Doherty, and our managing director, Jim Wilson, both of them penned this book, and it became a bestseller over the last few months. I would strongly recommend you to kind of take a look at this book. I mean, when I read this book, that comes to me every time, having been in practice for the last 20 years, is that AI is not futuristic. It's been there for the last 40, 50 years. And what's making it real now is the availability of computing power, the availability of data, and all the APIs that are available today. That's making it real. Today, we are looking at companies who are using deep learning and machine learning capabilities to sequence the entire human genome, for coming up with personalized medicine and personalized treatment. At the same time, we are looking at speech recognition capabilities and algorithms that is really enabling the next generation of human interaction, customer interaction, and almost representing the brand of the company, where AI is becoming the new UI for the whole company. And this is happening right here, right now. And that's what we believe, that AI is happening. It's available, it's achievable, and it's affordable. And that makes the whole discussion so much more exciting. So some of the seminal research that we did over the last 6 to 8 months, we interviewed about 1,000+ business executives across the globe. Few key things came out, and I want to share with this group. First and foremost, 85% of the executives that we interviewed indicated that they are going to invest in AI in the next 3 years. So obviously, a lot of optimism around it. We did the research around understanding how major economies and global industries are kind of looking at adopting AI. And our research showed that applying AI is going to help improve profitability on an average to about 38% when you look at all the major industries. It also showed us that it's going to have a huge potential economic output, boost to the economic output in the order of about $14 trillion when we look at the 12 major economies across the globe. What it also showed us was that the whole labor productivity is going to increase by 40%, when we look at the time horizon between now and 2035. And the premise was really around AI being able to help augment the human workforce, keeping people at the center, but also a big focus around the whole interaction between human and machine, where the machine is doing a part of the work, handing it over to the human being, and vice versa. A new level of collaboration will start, which is going to completely reimagine the future of work and future of our workforce. And that's going to be extremely, extremely exciting and interesting, as we are going to witness that. So having talked about all of that optimism, and all of that potential that AI and the capabilities are bringing together, what does that pivot means to, being an intelligent enterprise, right? And Al and I am going to now spend the time to talk about the examples of our different client industries. But I want to kind of hone on, some of the core principles or traits that we are seeing with a lot of the successes that organizations are having in their AI journey. And these are around the 4 broad themes. The first one that I would like to highlight is about how AI is enabling companies to become much more flexible, much more agile. And I call it as, reimagining the whole business process, which is not static, which is not rule-based, which is not just following the standardization principles that has happened in the 90s and the early 2000s, but really reimagine the entire business process that I call as living, as adaptable, which is going through a virtuous cycle and a constant learning loop. It is taking all the signals coming in from the different data sources and then taking the actions and decisions and constantly learning. And that creates a completely new dynamism around how we manage our businesses and processes globally. The underlying factor around creating a living and adaptable process is really the data and availability of data and making real-time decisions. And that means the second big trait for AI-led companies is to become data natives, empowering all of our associates and workforce to be savvy with data, to be having access to all the data that is needed to do their jobs better, and ability to make real-time decisions with the power of data and insights. It has a huge mindset shift that happens when you move from a process-centric organization to a data-driven business model. It's a different mind shift and needs a lot of cultural change, a lot of leadership commitment, really to walk the talk. And then the third big area is around the network effect. And the way I characterize network effect is how you take a success in one part of the business and really democratize that and industrialize that across the entire organization. Successful companies are able to do that. And when you do that, you are following the whole constant learning loop cycle, which doesn't recognize organizational boundaries. So you are breaking the silos that exist within the organization, not just within your organization, but across your extended supply chain, both with your customers as well as with your suppliers. And that creates a completely new set of exponential growth opportunities. And when we do all of these, it's very important to really be responsible in terms of how we deploy the AI systems into our business or into our daily lives, into our society, and so on and so forth. And I'm going to talk about that as we go through the presentation. This is going to be a very important aspect to create trust and reduce the skepticism and concerns that are there with AI. So I wanted to leave you all with these 4 themes. And now we are going to delve into the examples where we will touch upon this and bring it to life. And with that, I want to welcome Al and walk us through some of the examples.
Thank you. Thank you, Arnab. A pleasure to be here. I'm excited to talk about it. We're going to talk about 4 different industry examples of how we think about applying applied intelligence. And some in the audience probably care about the how and how we used it, and we'll definitely talk about that and be open to some Q&A on the mechanics of what we do. But I would also imagine for most of my conversations, I do strategy work, so most of my questions are usually starting with a why. What's the business case for applied intelligence? What's the return on investment? It's a significant investment if your organization comes from a history of having never done it before. So the examples we're going to show, and essentially all of our examples, really hit on these 5 use cases. So if you're out there charged for your team with creating a business case around investing in AI, look to these 5. I think you'll find it. But as a broad coaching, I would tell you applied intelligence is going to change how our consumers experience our product and services. They are going to change what even we sell as products and services, how those products and services what products and services we should sell will be influenced by AI. And then lastly, which you're going to see a lot in the examples, how we operate as a business because of AI. So the first industry we'll pick on is consumer engagement. So think about brands and retailers and how the consumers experience us. Let's first set up a little bit of the problem state. Where is the industry today? And where is it going? How is technology changing it? Just like we talked about how dramatic this digital revolution is. If you're selling products, either as a retailer or a brand selling to the customer, in this industry, this is what you face. You face an explosion of channels, not just that are new ways of connecting to your customer and sharing information with your customer, but every one of these channels, I don't care who your partner is, every one of these channels now has development kits and technology available to be able, in the moment of that content being delivered, take the order. We as product companies and retailers haven't yet built the infrastructure to satisfy that order, but what the customer sees is at the moment that they feel a moment of desire, they can reach out to somebody they trust and say, I want it. So we as retailers have to adapt to this. We have to understand and invest in how to build that. But if you think about a traditional retailer or brand, being able to handle all of the choices that I have to make about what content to put in which channel and how to talk to each individual consumer, that's overwhelming and not doable with our current historic infrastructure. So we as retailers or brands grew up and built companies and business models built around wholesale business models where I bring product from manufacturer to the end consumer. But all of a sudden, if across all of those channels, I'm going to have all this persistence of relationships, and I'm going to have to remember who my customer is in all of those moments so I can respond appropriately, it changes the fundamental platform of retailing. We still need all the old platform essential elements, the means of production, the means of getting that supply to market, stores to distribute, marketing to bring the customer demand. But the essence of our relationship changes because of all of these digital channels. So we start where I grew up in an industry where I could go and talk to a customer to drive growth. I could increase their traffic, I could increase their conversion rate or their basket size. Those were all the levels of the business. But today, if we're going to drive growth in our businesses, we really have to move the revenue spending of that customer, and we have to do it competitively. So some of you will recognize the LTV yield equation on the lower left side, but if you're a traditional retailer, you never built your model to do that. So how do I start thinking about all the revenue dollars, the share of wallet that I have with that customer, the share of occasions, the share of use, and really optimize when and how I'm servicing and touching that customer? Can't do that with just my historic processes and systems. You really need two things. You need the ability to predict an individual customer, what their desires are, and how those desires change over the use occasion and where they might be at that moment in time. And most of our customers or clients might have a Laura, but we're not talking about a Laura as a personality. We're talking about Laura J. Smith that lives on 123 Maple Drive and goes to work here and transits on this hub. That is a profound difference for the way we've built our companies and how we make decisions about how to deploy money to drive demand. So it's profound in retail. And then secondly is when I get that demand and she says I have desire and she's able to reach out to me because I've built these digital channels, how do I get that service to her? How do I engage all my trading partners? How do I make the right decision about what inventory to bring her and who should bring it to her? I can't do that with just people. I need to superpower these people. So I'll give you a little example of where we did it with one retailer. This retailer provides services, products and services. And when we walked into the client, they had gone on a little bit of hiring. They were going to learn to use data and analytics, and they'd hired some data scientists. And those data scientists were doing multivariate testing. In this particular example, I'm talking about how to market. So they started with marketing in this example. And those data scientists, each individual one could do about 3 multivariate tests, and a good, well-run, executable multivariate test would give them results in 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the complexity of the test. And if you think, and you can understand that if you understand all those marketing channels that we just put up on that board earlier. Think about all the permutations if I'm going to go place an ad on search, or I'm going to place something on YouTube, or I'm going to place something on Instagram, or I'm going to place something on Facebook, and then think about making decisions across all those things. The permutations of what content and what decisions and what offer are huge. And we were using data scientists to really mathematically tackle that and scale tackle that at about one of those good tests, a couple of those tests every 3 to 6 weeks. So the reality is we said we need to get this so you don't need to be a data scientist to do it. How might I use applied intelligence to look at all those permutations, to let a person who's charged with growing demand and growing revenue yield in this market pick the targets that she thinks is important for her strategy, like how do I retain my existing customers? How do I optimize the lifetime value of a high-value customer? How do I target cross-sell in different products? How do I increase market basket? Let business users ask business questions and let machines scale the quality of that question by running tens of thousands of multivariate tests, by being able to iterate across all those permutations. Once you understand that, and I use marketing because it's relatively understand all the permutations we have to make as decision makers, but once you understand that and build an organization that can start to use machine learning and data in that way, you don't just stop at marketing. You start thinking about, well, I might think about my product completely different. I might test and have unique product by market. I might modify my market. I could test that product before it ever comes. I'm certainly going to use this for price, promotion, and placement's probably one of the most, as we get to last mile delivery everywhere, placement becomes a strategic place to use AI that drives the profitability of your firm. So I used a simple example, but hopefully the idea comes across in consumer products and retail. It's the plethora of emerging ways the consumer can talk to us and the need for us to talk to them individually that requires us to use machine learning and applied intelligence. And on none of these examples do we take away the role of the person. We completely redefine their job. I'm going to turn it back to you to cover the next section.
Thank you, Al. That's so powerful, as you talk about how we can reimagine the whole way to engage with customers and consumers, and we being all in this space. This is amazing. I mean, the way right now, for example, Netflix or Amazon, the way they are engaging with all of us. I mean, all the investments they have done, over the last many years is really acting the flywheel effect we can start seeing, right? So yeah, thanks for sharing that story. So I'm going to take a little switch now from the consumer to the food and agriculture industry, and this is something close to me, given I am such a big foodie. We are seeing a huge application of AI in the field of agriculture. When you look at agriculture today, statistics shows that across the world, there are over 795 million people who don't get access to quality food. As we look at the growth of the population globally, over the next 50 years, the amount of food that has to be produced in the different agricultural farms is going to be much higher than what has happened over the last 10,000 years. And how can AI really enable, to reimagine agricultural operations and empower farmers, to make decisions, everyday decisions, with the power of intelligence that is coming in? It's a complete change and shift in their business model. We have been working, with this client, who is a big agricultural manufacturer, have, acres, millions of hectares of agricultural land, and the challenge they are faced with is a lot of the decisions in terms of, which part of the, farm with thousands and thousands of trees and plants being grown, where to put their attention. Typically, they do a sample size, and people would go into the fields, and they would do their, samples, and they'll come back, and then they'll do an analysis. Based on that, they will take a lot of gut feel decisions. How is the weather going to look like tomorrow? What kind of soil condition we are seeing today in the sample set? Where should I actually do more nutrient injection? Where do I need to water my plants better? And so on and so forth. But it's a hugely manual process, and this is where we came in. And we worked with this client, over the last couple of years. Initially, a pilot. Now we are providing a precision agriculture service, which is nothing but AI at the center of it. Starting with being a data native. Being a data native, helping the client to actually look at data that is coming in, from aerial images with drones flying on the top of the agricultural farmlands, taking aerial images to show the kind of distress that the crops might be at, which is not possible when you go down there. Looking at IoT devices emitting soil chemical composition information, as well as weather information, and triangulating all of that into a cloud-based platform, applying machine learning and a lot of machine vision capabilities on top of that to really come up with predictive recommendations that can go up to the farmer and on their mobile device, really giving them guidance and assistance in terms of what specific intervention needs to be made that particular day, that particular week, based on all the multiple parameters that we are seeing coming in from the soil information, the weather information, the color of the leaves, whether there is weed formation happening somewhere, which parts of the plantation that's not actually growing properly, and giving very personalized recommendation and targeted recommendation for the farmer. Taking it one step further, integrating that intelligence back into the work management system of the broader agricultural company to help deployment of the right resources in the right way, in a smarter way. And as we do that, think about the living, adaptive process that I mentioned earlier. The farmer, the agricultural operations manager, they became part of that learning loop. And they received the recommendation, they looked at the recommendation, took an action. The feedback was good. They looped back the feedback into the learning system. If the result was not that great, they also provide that feedback. As a result of that, the whole precision agricultural engine started becoming smarter over a period of time. And then it scaled from applying to one particular farmland to hundreds of those farmlands across different crop varieties over a period of 6 months. And that's AI at scale, industrialized across their businesses, and really completely changing a mind shift. This company came from a mind shift of, in the past, they would take more rule-based, experience-based decisions. And today, it's all happening with data, becoming data native, and really living the new adaptive agricultural process where the farmers and the agricultural machine operators, all of them are part of the new AI learning system, providing feedback on every interaction, every iteration. And what does it result in? It results in higher yield of the produce, better quality, optimization of resources, water resources, nutrients, human labor, and primarily it's augmenting the human to actually, whether it's a farmer or the operator, agricultural operator, to make better decisions, make better profits, serve people like you and me with better quality of food. So that's one story I wanted to share in terms of a journey. This is going on. It's a big transformation journey. And based on the success, and I had an opportunity of meeting the person who is running it. He's like a 28-year-old guy. This is a family-run business. He's the son of the CEO and chairman, and he's running it. And it's creating a completely new cultural shift within their enterprise, which was kind of an archaic business, and now this is the cool part of their business, which is completely changing the way they operate and the way they move forward in the business moving forward. So the next one that I wanted to talk about from there, since that I know I've talked about food and all of you are hungry, I guess, or had your lunch. The next one I want to talk about is really about creating safe and secure society. And this is really happening now. This is what you're seeing here is from the city of Singapore. And they have an initiative called Safe City, and we had an opportunity of partnering with them to really look at all the unstructured data that is coming in, from video recordings, that is coming in from all the natural text information, web chat information, social media information, looking at all the traffic signals and traffic patterns, and how to create a command center, an AI-driven command center that will help the government to monitor crowd movements across the cities, understanding and predicting how the crowd behavior is going to look like on a particular day of the week, on a particular big event day or a game day, how does it look like? And based on that, understanding how can we optimize the whole setting of the city, right from traffic management to taking care of any kind of emergency prevention, how many resources we need to apportion for taking care of any kind of risks that might happen, so on and so forth. That's kind of a new capability that has been developed. What it also does is not just looking at predicting crowd behavior, but also anticipate what kind of incidents can happen that might have a security threat or any kind of risk. And how do you actually predict those in advance and then prepare for those kind of events in advance so that you're not taken by surprise. When you look at these examples, it's not about just about how we are industrializing and scaling this capability, but it's also about a new capability that is just not possible with human beings and how we are helping human beings. And one of the example is, for example, there's a game day going on, and thousands of people like us, we go into the game, into the stadium. One person went with a backpack, and then after 2 hours comes out without the backpack. The human being is just not going to make that out. But the machine realizes that and gives an alert. This is a simple example, right? And obviously, it has to be done in a way that it's responsible, it takes care of privacy, and so forth. But this is a completely new capability that if you can scale, is going to create a much safe and secure environment for the entire city. And you can scale it across multiple cities. I mean, in the country that I'm coming from, in India, our new government, new minister, there is a big initiative around digital cities. There are 100 cities that are getting digitalized and using this smart city concept. And the advantage of AI is that you can actually scale this pretty fast. Once you have proven the success, you can then replicate that models pretty quickly, across the other cities. And that's, I think, is a huge, huge power that impacts all of us. The third example, that I wanted to share, this is something we are applying to ourselves. I think Al mentioned, alluded to that. We as Accenture, we run, apart from the work that we do in terms of developing the strategy for our clients, executing that strategy through technology deployment, reimagining the whole digital transformation, and then finally we help our clients manage the operations, And this is a big business for Accenture. And we are, as we speak, over the last 2 to 3 years, we are transforming ourselves. We are reimagining how we manage the business processes of our clients. And we are applying AI at the core of it. 2, 3 key dimensions. One of that is obviously to take cost out. But the bigger purpose is how do we actually enable our associates? We have 100,000 associates working in that part of the business. How we enable those associates to do much higher value-added work. How we enable managing those processes in a completely new way that is powered by AI so that it's more accurate. It's compliance ready. It's helping us to manage any kind of fraud that might be happening. It enables us to manage better customer relationships and supplier relationships. And that's really the core purpose, as to why we are reimagining our own business process, business operations with the power of AI. The example here I took from was on invoice management. Roughly around in a year, we work with about 2,000 clients in this space, 200 clients in this space, with over 70 million invoices that goes through Accenture. We are responsible for authenticating those, managing those, validating those. It was done with over 6,000 plus, full-time equivalent employees who were doing that. It was a hugely manual process. And we brought in, artificial intelligence and machine learning at the core of it that completely reimagined this process. What we are doing here, and we are working very closely with Google in driving this, where we are using basically Google Vision API, which is really a powerful out-of-the-box capability that is helping us to extract the natural text that is there in the invoice picture, along with the spatial information, of that particular picture, and then bringing that together, concatenating that together to extract features, from those concatenations. And we created, what we call as basically these are digitalized tokens, a word with a position where it is placed, and each of them we are uniquely identifying as digitalized tokens, and then we are making multiple vectors, around those tokens to help create features that uniquely define that. And then those features are then used to train the deep learning models, which are then fed back into the live, system of all the invoices that we have to validate that, to check for issues, errors, if there is any kind of potential fraud or compliance issue, and flag that to the humans. And then the human associate doesn't have to do all the grunt work that was being done earlier, but now is more in an advisory role. and is more in a supervisory role, whereas all the grunt work of validating, checking, and accuracy and all of that is being checked, and then there is a green light given, and if there is a green light given and the human agent has approved it, it goes on for processing. If there are fraud or compliance-related issues or missing information or some duplicate information, some conflicting information, that's flagged off as well to the human agent, and then the human agent accordingly takes more supervisory and advisory kind of function from there. And the fact that we are deploying it on Google technology with the cloud platform, it has really helped us scale from 1 client to 200 clients today. And the fact that we are managing 70 million invoices in a year, it gives us a huge amount of data sets with different form factors of invoices, different kind of text orientations, and all of that to train and make our intelligent engine much more efficient as days go by. And we are right now over 90-95% accuracy in terms of the checking the validations of these invoices. So that's a huge impact for us. It helps us give better service to our clients, at the same time creates a much more foolproof business process system. So having talked about the examples that Al talked about on consumer, we talked about from how it helps with agriculture, whether it's about reimagining our own business process. I want to kind of spend time a little bit now in terms of how to get it right. I mean, all of these are great stories. We talked about some of the examples. And I want to touch upon 3 key tenets or secret sauce that we are seeing that is very important to get the intelligent enterprise journey right. The first and foremost that we are seeing with clients who are very successful in this is really figuring out the human-machine collaboration. This is the first C, the collaboration C. This is extremely important because human beings have certain strengths around creativity, decision-making, judgment, whereas the machines have strength really around doing things in a repeatable manner, high accuracy, high speed, right? How do we bring that together and design systems, AI systems, that really take care of these 2 angles very well? Is going to be very, very important. It is going to address the fact whether humans are going to compete. Absolutely no. Humans are going to work together with machines powered by these AI systems. And you can think of it almost as if human ingenuity is actually getting complemented with intelligent technology. And organizations need to really figure this out very well. And this is not just a technology play. It is about reimagining the whole persona as to who is going to use that system. Whether it's that agricultural farmer, whether it is the customer value manager or a marketing manager, whether it's the supply chain manager, whether it is the event manager, who is going to use the AI system and how he or she can then work with the machine to actually create a much higher performance, much higher outcome. And keeping that design thinking in mind when you develop the AI system is extremely critical. So that's the first C. The second big focus is really around capabilities, and capabilities that are end-to-end. And I wanted to touch upon this because people sometimes feel that capabilities means technology, which we have all talked about so far, all the different algorithms, all the machine learning capabilities. Yes, that is great. But that's just one part of the capability. The second big part of the capability that is required is the fuel for the whole AI system. That's the data. That's the data platform. How do you get your data supply chain in place? Because that's going to be the concrete asset on top of which you will be actually building all of these AI systems. It's also about how do you then embed the AI system into your business functions, into your business processes. And that requires a different skill, different capability around adoption, around change management, around making sure that employees are really believing in it and there is a tangible value for the employees within the organization. And how do you bring all of these end-to-end capabilities right from having a strategy of AI to actually creating the platform, enabling all of these different capabilities that we spoke about earlier, and then how do you manage the change and the adoption into the business? That creates real transformation. And then the third one that I want to speak about is, as you think of these capabilities, how do you go about building those? And that's where the third C, which is the connections, is extremely important. And we are seeing that, and we did a big research on this last year around how to increase the artificial intelligence quotient of organizations. And we saw that the companies which are taking an outside-in approach, by that I mean taking an approach of bringing innovation not just from within, but from outside, working with startups, working with research institutes, working with the academia, they get a boost start compared to the companies which are trying to do everything in-house. So a critical decision factor that every leading organization in the AI space will have to think about is what they build on their own, what is it that they want to buy from a service provider, and what is it that they borrow? What is it that they get inspired with using the power of startups or the academia or the research partners? And I think that partnership ecosystem is going to be extremely critical, especially as we scale the AI agenda within the companies. So having spoken about that, I want to leave with this last thought, is that as we think of reimagining the business, as we think about creating the transformation, we have to do it in a very responsible way. AI is a profound technology. It has a huge value potential. But how do we make sure that there is a certain level of accountability that comes in when we are deploying AI systems? How do we make sure that organizations are thinking about every stakeholder, not just the customer, not just the supplier, the employees, the government, the policymakers, how we think of all of those stakeholders, right? And how do we create a right amount of governance model and operating model to see, as decisions are being taken by AI systems, who takes the accountability? Whether it is the algorithm which is accountable, whether it is the person who made the algorithm is accountable, whether it's the person who is actually the sponsor of this whole initiative, who is accountable for that? And these are questions that needs to be really thought through very, very carefully. And as you go through that transformation, think about the people. Think about the people that needs to be reskilled, that needs to be rotated into the new AI journey, so that we don't leave anybody as we go into the journey. How do we take the people who probably are not skilled, who probably don't understand and appreciate? How do we educate them? How do we make them the advocates of the AI journey? And more importantly, how do we make them successful in their career and in their journey with AI? And last but not the least, security. How do we make it all very secure so that there is no bug that comes into the AI algorithm which is running a manufacturing operations or a customer operations, because there is a lot of reputation risk associated with that. How do we manage that in a very responsible manner? So with that, I would like to bring it to a close here. Personally, being in the practice for so many years, I feel this is an amazing field. Few things I want us to remember, that AI is all about augmenting human beings. How do we think about creating living and adaptable business processes? And how do we really make sure that we are all becoming data natives and enabling that new culture within the organization? And as we do that, how do we make sure we do it in a way it's responsible, it creates trust, transparency, and addresses people's concerns and take them together in that journey?